Hey, what's up? This is Chosen, and for this one, I'm going to be joined by my friend and clanmate MadCapper, and he has been a Crusader since the early days, the launch of Diablo Immortal. So, for those of you that are thinking about maybe swapping over to the Crusader now that class changes are a thing in the game, we're just going to hang out with the Crusader main and talk about where they rank on the tier list and the positives and the negatives, what skills to watch out for, and just the basics that you should be equipped with when making that decision. So let's get into it. Alrighty, now we are joined by MadCapper. How you doing today?
Good, good. How are you, man?
Hey, I'm hanging in there. So I guess first off, let's kick it off with the tier list. So Crusader right now grading out as third overall on the classes. Do you agree with that? You think that's too high, too low?
I think overall it's pretty close. I would personally put them ahead of the Demon Hunter, but it's like splitting hairs. Like I would think they're both a 7.6, and it's play style more than one's better than the other because they're polar opposites. I would say probably in the game.
Yep. Okay. And then as far as like the different areas, did you see any grades that kind of stuck out to you that you would disagree with?
It's tough. I would say solo play. You see, I'm solo playing right now. It's hard to say because it's so easy because you have such a versatile toolkit. So in that respect, there's nowhere that I'm like, oh, this is hard. But it's not like when you think of things like the challenge rifts, they're the obvious worst in challenge rifts. So which is also could be solo play. So yeah, I think that one's about right. The only other one that I really thought PvP is tough because again, it depends on how you consider PvP as it stands now. That's the right number. They might even be lower. Demon Hunter might be better. Barbarian might be better in PvP. But as you look at PvP from like the Shadow Wars, name a Shadow War that doesn't want a Barbarian in it. I think
You mean a
Barbarians can be in the
Crusader?
final three because we're an activator. We have
No, you mean
barrier
Crusader?
damage.
You said
Sorry,
Barbarian. Yeah,
Crusader.
yeah.
Oh, that's no. I think we should be better than like the Barbarian might be better than the Crusader
Oh, you
in
meant to say
PvP as it
Barbarian.
stands
Oh,
right
okay.
now.
Okay.
Yeah, but when you include everything, the Crusader is probably a 9 if you consider all types of PvP and you consider, for example, if you're going up against a team that's as good or better than you, but I have a 5-second invulnerability, that is game changing. Without that, you might be dead. But with that, your team lives. So it's if you play Crusader in the current battlefield where it's random and you're up against it's essentially a pub. Uh, it's not very good. It's where it should be, but I think if you include the Shadow Wars, their value goes up ridiculously higher. But yeah, other than that, the rest look really right.
Okay, cool. So then just walk us through maybe like the general knowledge. Someone that doesn't know anything about the Crusader, what's the general gist of the class when you're switching over to it?
Sure. A Crusader is a melee class. They're an in-your-face class. They're not. There's no duck and weave in this class. You can see you're right into the mobs. You've got very high mobility because of your horse. It really changes how you play the game, and you also have a lot of AOE damage skills. You're not the best in AOE, but you're not the worst. Your damage is pretty low, but your sustain is pretty good. Banner is your lifeblood. It's what makes you good in solo and in groups. Um, Not very well used in PvP, at least not from like battlefield, the battlegrounds. But it makes everything so much easier. The biggest thing about the Crusader is they have, I would argue, the most varied kit. You can do anything with them. Every skill has 10 different options depending on what gear you change, and all of them can be functionally very strong depending on what you're doing. So, um, I stopped doing it just because of how many times you get new gear, but I was using all 6 loadouts because I could use 10 loadouts in this class. So the versatility of play of the barbarian as a melee class is its strength, and it makes it fun and varied and makes it so it doesn't get boring very quickly. The biggest negative with them is they just don't have the damage of the other classes. They can live, they sustain. They're not quite. I feel like in older Diablos, you could have a stall like a tank class, and they feel like they should be a tank class because of their low damage, but they're not. The way that Immortal comes has kind of built itself. There isn't really a tank class. Like Necros are just as tankier type of thing. So yeah, just you have lower damage is kind of the biggest negative of it.
Okay. Cool. Now, why isn't banner good in PvP? It seems like you start an engagement, you drop a banner, and now you're buffing. Well, I guess it's only a party thing. Ah, that's probably why. Yeah, it's not like
Yeah.
the whole
So
engagement.
Banner for me is good. Like, don't get me wrong, Banner. If you just look at banners of itself, you're like, yeah, I have Arrow Keeper, which is a specific helm modifier that allows it to follow me. That would be great in Battlegrounds. But the problem is, look at the cooldown. You got a 24-second cooldown, and it means I have to take away a skill. And if we were to go to my PvE loadouts, what skill am I going to drop? I've got 3 stuns potentially, and I've got either a barrier or a damage dealer. So it's more of what am I going to drop for something with such a high cool? Look how many seconds I am without a skill. So I've seen people use banner, and if you were coordinated, like you do again when you talk about Shadow Wars, you don't have banner, you're a bad human being. Anytime you're in a group, but when you're in Battlefield, it's just the reality is your team's not with you. It's only for yourself. You might as well have crowd control over the extra damage.
Okay. So you kind of did the positives and trade-offs, negatives kind of there in one, but it sounds like to me the positive is you're very generally useful, and your banner is very sought out by allies, so you'll be a very valuable part of the group that people want to play with. The negatives would be that you got to kind of be up in the fray melee, and you aren't going to crank out a lot of DPS. Is that kind of
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, the biggest thing you're the most useful class in the game as far as party. Um and you can build yourself 20 different ways and still be the most useful in a party, but your damage is just not where other people are. Without whaling. Now, you can whale yourself into damage like any class, but
Oh yeah,
we're
that's
just
true.
talking
Yeah.
generally speaking.
That'd be an interesting question. Like 5,000 plus resonance. What are the best classes? That would be. I mean, I guess it depends
Yeah,
on.
because like for example, Gosu is best on our server. He's 3K 3K plus, and he's got like 7,500 damage, 8K damage.
That's
So,
that's not best on the server. We've got people like
well,
way.
no, that's just the one that I fight all the time. I see Gosu because he's very Jimbo and Gosu are the two Crusaders that are all over the place,
Ah,
and
okay.
they hit
Oh,
really
okay.
hard.
Oh, and you meant
They
like just
do.
Crusader. Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, just Crusader. So from that perspective, that's decent damage. Um, it's not wizard damage. Like I mean, Uni and CV. I think CV's a wizard as well, or a necro. But those guys can be ridiculous. But yeah, it's at the end of the day, it's still whale versus whale. They're still gonna have lower damage output.
Gotcha. Okay. Can you make your way to town and pop up the
Yeah, sure.
skills for the Crusader, and then just kind of go through the skill tree and just give like a quick rundown, like S tier, obviously banners S tier, and just go through and like rank them S through Fs, just so people know what skills to kind of watch out for when they're leveling, or when they finally figure things out and start putting a build together.
We were just talking about TPing and how it's such a pain in
Oh,
the
dude,
butt.
it's so awful in this game. By far the worst they've ever done, Town Portal in any Diablo game.
So, this is the strength, of my opinion, of the Crusader, and I think it's more so than any other class. There's not a bad skill in this game. There's better and worse. So, as far as our primary attacks, I prefer Punish because of how its ultimate. This ultimate gives you absorbs damage equals to 20% of your max life for 3 seconds, which really helps out in PvP. It also now it doesn't say it, but it's faster. It swings faster. And primary attack, there's a lot of different modifiers that are based on primary attack. So while my primary attack itself isn't great, faster swing means, for example, howlers will proc quicker. If you're using lightning core, it'll proc more often. So I really like that. But sacred fire is also really good. The ultimate is just kind of a big, cool, big ass sword that's AoE. But in its regular one, there's a modifier that kicks out damage. So these are both kind of A tier abilities, though I would say the damage from him is like a B or a C. Like we said, they have the
Yep.
worst damage, especially from the primaries.
Yep. Okay.
Condemn is probably my least favorite. I would say this is a C tier ability. I don't see a lot of use from it from a Crusader. It, in theory, is good because it's got a low cooldown of 9 seconds and explodes for 9k damage to all nearby enemies after 3 seconds. But the thing is, it first of all, you can detonate it early. It does have some modifiers, but I find that when you're running into a group, unfortunately, battlegrounds, they don't stay there for you. You know, you're not going to be like, hey guys, if you could just stand in this for, and I can run in. And 9k damage honestly isn't the highest damage we have for an AoE. So to me, you would be putting this you'd be putting the weaker damage in for no reason. So this is a C tier. Conjuration of Light is an S tier ability. Also because of its different modifiers. You can see right now, I have Holy Fire, which does 33,000 damage per person. It's an AoE. So if you're in a group of 4, that's 130,000 damage you're doing.
That seems
And
ridiculous. That's
on a
crazy.
20-cent cooldown. This is what melts everything. And then don't forget, on top of that, you put Banner, and then Banner crits it. So the Holy Fire is,
Is
you
there
know,
any way
when
you
we're
can show
running
the
Mad
radius on
King.
that? Can you like cast it in town and show the
Yeah, sure.
radius?
It's not a huge radius,
Oh, so that's it
but
right
it's a
there.
melee radius.
Okay.
Right? So you jump into a group of people.
But it
I use
follows
this in
you.
PvP too.
Okay.
Yeah, it does follow you. It follow and the distance, your allies have to be close, so it makes it hard to use it again in PvP. But I still use it in PvP because I chase down, throw that on, put on my horse, and I kill people. That's how I get my kills in PvP.
So that's
So
why
one of
when
the
we're doing
best,
like Mad King Breach, you run that and then you tell all of your
yeah.
allies to stand next to the boss or whatever.
Yeah. So, for example, because you and I do Mad Kings all the time, those gargoyles on the stairs, I'll stand there, make sure they crisscross. I'll pop that with Banner, and they melt. Because you hit your vengeance, I hit that, and they're gone in 2 seconds.
Yep.
It's a pretty
Yeah, that's
obscene
that's a
spell.
pretty cracked ability.
Yeah. Consecration, I give it an A tier. This is really, really good early on. There's also a modifier that allows it to follow you. It also has a modifier to put in a slow, but it's typically a ground target, and so it becomes less useful just because there's better abilities later on. But it's definitely something I throw in there once in a while, especially for the slows, is really nice. If you're solo farming a big mob, you can drop it, stand behind them, use my Sacred Fire with the modifier that shoots a flame out. There's different ways you can use it. The reason I'm not a huge fan of it is a lot of the times you're speed farming, so anything you're planting on the ground becomes useless because you're not staying there long enough for it to become any use. But it is an A ability early on. Drawn Quarter, definitely S tier, double S tier. It's people talk Banner. Drawn Quarter is actually probably the best skill we have. It allows you to run, and it gives you the fastest movement in the game. There's nothing faster than Drawn Quarter. There's no, even the Necro's ghost form or whatever he calls it, which unfortunately can fear you on the horse,
I think
but
it's
it's
like
not as
spirit
fast
form or
as this.
something.
Yeah, spirit form, right? So, so this is the fastest. It also has it speeds up your attack as well, which is really good for things that proc off of your primary. It doesn't do a ton of damage. You hit weaker with it, but then you have a whole bunch. This is another one that has like 5 different modifiers to it. The 2 I use is this one, which is a Fiery Steed, which doesn't drag them. So by default, it actually will lock down and drag your enemies in chains. But I use the Fiery Steed, which doesn't drag them, but creates a burning trail, which just improves AoE damage. There's also one that does a knockback, but doesn't fire. That's the one I use in PvP. So it'll actually knock people away from you, and it's like a mini stun. So it's really good for chasing people down or interrupting. So that's why I use that with Steed. It really helps me get to the back line, knock those wizards that are channeling. Definitely an S tier.
Wow.
Falling Sword.
Sorry,
Oh,
while
sorry, go
you're
ahead.
on Drawn Quarter, are you like immune to CC?
No, should
Okay.
be. That's my biggest. That's my biggest want. Is no. There's no ability in the game for Crusader to be immune. There is for just about every other champion. Like I don't know what your Spidey one is that Demon Hunters use, where they like use a rope and fly away.
Daring swing.
You can't be interrupted mid that. Um, Monks have like a 5-second cooldown on an immunity. The shade form or spirit form is immune. There's no immune for us. So I think Drawn Quarter should have an immunity. It doesn't. We can get knocked off it, and we can get frozen while on horse.
So
Unfortunately,
when you're on your horse and a wizard black holes you, what happens? Does it rip you off your
you
horse?
get knocked off your horse and pulled in. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So it's real positional. I usually use horses for either chase down or runaway because the knockback it gives them a mini stun, which gives me enough time to get enough distance. But in the thick of the battle, I won't use it. It's too unreliable. You get knocked down for everything. I feel like the tub thumping
Yeah, so
song.
it just ends the ability, huh? Okay.
Yeah, just
Yep.
ends the ability.
Okay, cool. Go ahead with
Um,
falling sword then. Thanks.
yeah, Falling Sword is probably the worst skill. It's very similar, in my opinion, to Condemn. In theory, it's pretty good. It gives you a chance to move locations. So you cast it within a range, which is pretty wide range. Actually, I can equip it to show you. And the reason, so you have that range for it. Oops, you have this range, and then when you cast it, it's there, and when you cast it again, you zip over there. So in theory, really great ability. The reality is it has very poor damage, and it's not your only mobility ability, and makes it kind of. I'd rather use one of the other abilities like Shield Charge, which has that with a stun. This has a 3-second stun, but again, people don't stand around and wait. You see that ability, you run away from the sword, right? Because there's a delay between being able to use it and not. So it potentially could be a good ability, but I find in practice, especially if you're using controller like most of us do, it just makes it a very difficult item to use. It makes it, and the damage isn't very big on it. Now there are some modifiers that allow you to use it as a stun or a barrier. There's again a lot of modifiers on it, so potentially Falling Sword with the right person, maybe on a keyboard user, Falling Sword could actually be very very strong. Um, the reality is, for most people using anything else, it's not. It's not
I
very
think
strong.
with
There's
it
just
being a skill
better abilities.
shot, it should do a little bit more damage than that.
Yeah, see that 7K, like even Consecration is doing that 19K on the ground target. Conjuration of Light, you're doing 33,000. All you have to do is run at a person. Condemn even has more damage. And all you have to do is be close to a person. Falling Sword skill shot, 7K damage. Now it's 7 on both sides. So it's 7 when you cast it and 7 when you land.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
okay. Okay.
But
Yeah.
but again, PVE you can typically just use consecration to get more damage than that, right? Because it's a P. If you can group up PVE, because they'll all come at you, you can just use consecration and get more damage than Falling Sword. So
Yep.
it's really not that it's a bad ability; it's that there's just other abilities that are better. I think. Now there is one caveat to that: Falling Sword with Little Lance is a very good mobility PvP ability. I don't use it anymore, but it modifies it to change it so that you have a dash. And it's just a quick zip that then closes the gap. Same kind of distance thing, but because it's not a skill shot, it's just a targeted zip. It's a lot better. So I used to use that a lot, and it's a good skill for that for PvP gap closing. I don't think we need to talk too much about Holy Banner. It's probably the most overpowered skill in the game. It powers up everyone. So what it does is it gives you 100% critical hit chance. It decreases the damage to 135 from double. However, anything over your critical hit chance over 100 will grant up to 65 additional crit damage. So if you have a champion that already has good crit hit chance, it'll actually do as much damage as just normal crit, but with 100% chance. So absolutely ridiculous strength. And again, so many different ways to use this. You can cast it on the ground. You can use Arrow Keeper, which is a helmet that modifies it so it follows you. You can change it to a damage dealing beacon. You can change it to a beacon that aggroes. You can change it to. There's one more that I'm missing. So there's a ton of different ways you can use the Holy Banner. More in PVE. I think like group PvP and group PvE, you're going to be just using it as it is with a Arrow Keeper. That's the smartest move. But if you're in PvE against certain mobs that are stronger than you, having something that can aggro that's crazy good, right? So um, potential double S tier. So many different ways to use it. Probably the best ability in the game, in my opinion, for group.
Yeah, for sure. As a demon hunter, I'm always looking for a Crusader to run with.
Oh yeah, no. And this is what makes us most group friendly. It's not the only thing. I think people silently realize how good like Conjuration of Light is. Oh, and I didn't mention Conjuration of Light. That's the same skill that I'm damaging now, but with a modifier, I actually change it to either a 3-second immunity or a ground targeted 5-second immunity, and that's what I'll use in Vault and important battleground, like when I know I'm up against like the Gosus of the world and those high end champions. You're gonna look at Conjuration of Light. That 5-second immunity is pretty ridiculous, or broken, as Veiled would say.
All right.
Judgment. So Judgment itself is trash. I think it's the worst ability we have. It's a higher cooldown than any of the other, than Condemn, for example. It slows by 50%, but I can get a modifier in Consecration. The damage is nothing. The stun has to require them to stay in that circle. So overall, not a very strong ability. However, it does have one good use. There's a shoulder modifier that allows you instead to summon an angel for like 10 seconds. And that just having a mob, especially when you're in things like challenge rifts, when you have an ally that you can summon every, I think, 15 seconds, Banner will affect its damage as well, so it can crit and stuff. It just makes it so much easier to get through some of those. Bloodright is another thing. Very helpful. So Judgment overall, I would say, is C tier, but very specific situations, modifying that to do the angel summon is pretty crazy good.
And you know what's hilarious is whoever wrote this game, they can't spell judgment.
Yeah, I know. Judgment.
There's also a Paragon skill called Judgment, and it's spelled wrong there too. So on both the Crusader skill and the Paragon skill, there's no E in Judgment. So or there's supposed to be two E's.
They're missing the E.
Yeah, they're missing an E.
Well done, Blizzard. So yeah, it's again overall it's not a great skill. I don't use it a lot, but it does come in handy very specific times. Sacred Chain is the PvP broken ability. There are 2 modifiers that make it broken. It in itself is average at best, right? It throws Holy Chain, bounces between enemies, strikes up to 8 targets, dealing damage, stuns them for 12 seconds, but are dispelled. Player stun is 3 seconds, but it breaks on damage, so that's itself is garbage. However, there's 2 modifiers that make it really good. There's Frozen Chain, which is a shoulder, and the Frozen Chain allows everyone to be frozen for 3 seconds, and it isn't broken by damage. So that's now an AoE stun. It's within an area, right? They have to be a certain area to bounce from each other, and it's 3 seconds. Then there's a second modifier on the helmet that allows you, they suck together. So now you've got a frozen AoE that puts everyone together, and all the rest of my abilities are typically my character AoE. So imagine I run into, I use Sacred Chain, I get 2 or 3 enemies that are all standing together, that sucks them in. I run in with my Conjuration of Light, and I start doing massive damage to them. And if I'm with a couple barbarians, they're all dead. It's pretty crazy. So this is a D tier ability that with modifiers in PvP is an S tier ability. It's the best stun in the game for us, and it's what makes us viable in PvP.
Okay.
Very strong, very fun. Shield Charge is another stun. It's a bit of a skill shot, but you also, there's an ability, or one of the modifiers that gives you an extra charge as well. I used to use this one quite often. I'm not using it anymore in PvP, and I'll talk about why in a minute. But I would say this is an A tier ability. I mean, it's a 3-second stun. It's become less useful now that the Gladiator tree has opened up for Paragon. That makes it a little bit more difficult because they get immunity from one stun. So if you're sitting there, you just charge into a bunch of them, and they're all immune. Well, you just gave yourself a whole.
It's so hard to kill people now in PvP. There's just so many. Ever since that Paragon tree, you get people with Phoenix Ashes and Gladiator, and then you got Barbs, Undying Rage.
But overall, I mean, when you look at it, you've got really good mobility on it. You hit it, they're stunned, they took damage. Now you can come in with your other abilities. So it is a good gap closer. I used it for the longest time, but yeah, oops, what did I hit? Oh God, where do we go?
Uh-oh. Broke the game.
All right, we'll just hide back here. What what could possibly go wrong?
That's right.
Okay, so shield charge. Yeah, I call it an A ability, maybe a B. It's strong. It's a gap closer. It's got a stun. PvP is really where it's at. Shield glare potentially is really good. I haven't been able to really find use for it. I think this would be good. I would use this in like a 3v3v3 type thing because it does give a 3-second blind. And if you've ever been blinded, it's a pain in the butt. You know, the one rift you walk in and you can only see about foot ahead of you in all directions, that's blind. So very strong in that respect, but they have to be looking at you, which makes it hard to do in PvP because everyone's running all in all directions. So it does make it hard to use. But and I don't think it's a very big radius. I don't know if it shows it. Yeah, well, that's actually yeah. So you see how the blind works. It's got
Oh,
a
yeah?
so boom. It's a skill
Why did it
shot
flash
plus
red?
it's.
It went from like blue to red.
I think it's just because it wasn't letting me. I have no idea. I've never seen
Oh,
that before. To
okay.
be honest with you, I might have accidentally clicked. I might have clicked the cancel on my controller.
I got you.
So yeah, so it seems like it could be a good ability. Don't really use it. There is a modifier on Shield Glare that turns it into a channeled damage dealer, similar to Disintegration for wizards. But when you're a melee character with mobility as your main concern, the last thing you want to do is go drop to a knee, be immobile, and channel something. So I don't find that a very strong one. I would say Shield Glare is probably along with Judgment and Condemn with the worst skills in the game. Not that people haven't found great use for it, and I've been caught with the standard Shield Glare, and it's a pain in the butt. But 12-second cooldown's not bad for us. But yeah, overall, I think there's just better options out there. Spinning Shield, A tier, maybe even S tier. I call it S tier. I use it in all my builds. I'm even using it in PvP now.
I see a
There's a
lot of
ton,
satyrs running it. Yeah.
yeah, and there's a ton of modifiers for it too, and I think that's the craziest thing is that the different modifiers that we get so many modifiers in all our skills. So this one has standard spinning shield spins around you in a circle, or sorry, the standard one is like a boomerang, and then you can modify that spins around you in a circle. And then there's a modifier that does a corkscrew, which gets wider and wider. There's one that you throw it to a location and it spins in a circle and just keeps doing damage. And then my new favorite is the one I'm wearing now, which is Explosive Shield, and it deals 10k damage. The reason I like this is with Banner, it's a guaranteed crit, and it hits for about 22 to 27,000 per hit, and it's 3 charges. So I can do 75,000 damage to an enemy immediately. And it's an AoE, so it's not a huge area. But if they're grouped up again, remember I throw my frozen chain out, I run in, I pop around my circle, and I use this to explode. Even when I don't have banner on in arena, it's just doing a ton of damage for me, and it's a ranged damage, so very hard to get ranged damage from this champion. So I really like the explosive shield. I think it's one of the better.
Okay, cool. And then we got the last one here with sweep attack.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I don't use sweep attack a lot. I would say it's maybe a B. Part of it is it's got modifiers like everything else. I feel like a broken record. Um, in of itself, if you look at it and what it does, it's kind of underwhelming. It's a target in front of you, like that. It looks cool, looks fun, but it doesn't do a ton of damage. And I feel like there's better skills. But there are modifiers that allow you to stun people and bring them into you, which for PvE chasing down, if you can do that, it's a pretty good skill. I just didn't get that skill for the longest time. And when I finally got the modifier, the proper legendary piece to modify it, it felt like I was just better off. So I don't think this is a bad skill. I just think that it's a case of what skill are you going to give up? Like if I'm in PvP, this is the one I run, or this here. So I've got 2 stuns. I've got a mini stun with a chase, and I've got either damage or damage reduction. Right? What am I going to replace to put in sweep attack? And the answer is, I need those stuns. I need that mobility. So I go with no shield. Yeah, maybe. But then why wouldn't I go spinning shield or something like consecration or falling sword? Like there's just or banner, right? There's so many better abilities that this one kind of gets lost in the mix for me. So I call it a low B ability.
Okay.
And overall in PvE, it just doesn't do enough damage again.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And then lastly, just real quick, do you want to pull up the market and just go through and talk about what legendary gems to watch out for? Like maybe the
Oh, the
cheap,
market. Okay, yeah.
yep, maybe the cheap, like because on the sell screen you can see them all or whatever, you know?
Yeah. Why do I keep
Um,
doing that? Ooh.
yep. And then just go like, okay, these are the decent 1 stars. This is maybe 1 or 2 2 stars, and then a couple 5 star
Sure.
just to kind of like pay attention to.
So the ones I went through originally to use for 1 star, Berserker's Eye is really good. It increases all the damage you deal, but also increases the damage you take. I think the fact that you can put up immunity, you can put up, there's certain abilities that give you some kind of shield. Uh, just being able to do that damage, and especially in PvE, where do you care if you're taking damage? You have heal potions, right? That's your job, is to just deal damage. So a lot of people love Berserker's Eye. Um, I was using Sled's Weakening, very good PvE. I keep doing that, sorry. Very good PvE because it gives you that increased damage after killing an elite. So think of rifts, think of your outworld kind of circle farming grinding. You're always getting elites, you're always gaining damage. Makes it very pretty good for the price, right? Very low price, good value. Everlasting Torment, I think this is one I was using. This is the gem I took to 10 before I eventually sold it and replaced it with Seeping Bile. I still don't know if that was the right idea, but this one's a really good one. Your critical hits inflict agony, so it's 10% base damage plus 122 for every second for 6 seconds. What makes this so good is with your banner, you have 100% crit. So every hit during banner is proccing this. It can't be affected more than every 20 seconds, but it's just always, you're always going to do that to mobs every time banner's up. And then by the time banner's cooldown, which is 23 seconds, it'll be ready again. So it just makes it a very strong ability that matches with. And the last 1 star that I like is, or 2 star, I should say, is Lightning Core. Lightning Core charges up and you get damage every time you're swinging. So our primary attacks are kind of underwhelming. So the ability to add 1134 to nearby enemies and just basically get an AoE damage dealer makes it a pretty good one. Eventually, this is kind of the weakest of those cheaper ones because it's a 2 star, and 2 star don't necessarily get cheap to upgrade once you hit a certain threshold. But it's a nice one to have. I did use it for quite a while. The ones I use Phoenix Ashes. Uh, Ridiculously strong in when I'm in PvE content that's beyond my means. So really good in challenge rifts. Really good when you're pushing the next level. So if you're pushing Hell 4 and you should be in Hell 3 type of thing, because there's going to be those times when you get overhit, and this is going to give you a ridiculously strong shield. I have mine at rank 4, and it works really well. It absorbs it up to 450 for 6 seconds, and then it actually heals for whatever it doesn't hit for. So overall, pretty good. I mean, this is the level rank 2. It doesn't do that heal piece, but I mean, it's reasonably good. The prices are okay, so it's a way to go. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about Howler's Call, Seeping Bile. You know, everyone knows those ones. Blood-Soaked Jade. I use all 3 of these. Blessing of the Worthy, I think every satyr in the world has. When you take damage, you have a 20% to unleash retribution, 12% of your maximum life every 20 seconds. I have mine is a 3 star up to rank 5, so you get the magic find, unlocks at rank 5, and for 6 seconds after you take decreased damage. So it's just a really, because we're getting hit so often, that decreased damage is great. The fact that you're getting this extra damage on all enemies around you, and you're always getting hit because you're melee. So it's not like you're a demon hunter and your purpose is to not get hit. Your purpose is to be in there getting hit and throwing back damage. And Bottled Hope, broken. I think everyone says Bottled Hope is broken. Even for us, it's broken. It does not affect banner, which is unfortunate. It does not increase the banner. or decrease the cooldown on the banner. Unfortunately, we did test it, which is an unfortunate. Oh no, you know what? Bottled Hope does. Sorry, I take that back. It's the set item that doesn't. So this does work with banner. It's the other one that doesn't. My apologies. So Bottled Hope, you're just decreasing the rating, the time on your banner and your shield, be it a damage shield or otherwise. So, and it increases the movement speed. Um, it's just a really good ability to have with anyone that has buffs. Period. So that's it.
Cool.
Stay
Okay.
away from all the rest. I think that's what my I'm trying to think what my yeah, so I'm running Seeping Bile, Blood-Soaked Jade. There's my Bottled Hope, Phoenix Ashes. There's the Blessing of the Worthy, and finally a Howler's Call.
Okay. I like it. Definitely learned a lot about the satyr and a lot of different abilities and a lot of different things going on and different ways to play. So, are there any quick tips that I didn't touch on, or you didn't get a chance to say, or things that people should know, or did we kind of cover everything?
Biggest thing is know your legendary modifiers. There's so many. I've played a couple other classes as well, and I feel like those classes you kind of set into one or two. You don't do that with the satyr, and I think I kind of said before there's so many versatility, but you really want to figure out how all these different abilities, all these different modifiers, you're going to want to know them all because they all seem to be somewhat useful. And then for your set items, right now it's all about Vithus, which unfortunately Vithus is the one that doesn't work with banner for some reason, but overall it's still just a really good skill to have. After that, it's up to you. I was using Istar for a while, but I think Mount Bank is probably what I'm going to use. I'm going to use a 4-piece Vistus with a two-piece Mount Bank is probably the best bang for the buck for the satyr.
Okay. Well, yeah, I appreciate it, and I will link to MadCapper's content down below. You've been cranking out any Diablo Immortal content, or are you sticking to raid, or?
I was doing 99% raid. I did a couple on my main channel, and I've moved them over to a second channel, but I haven't really pushed or promoted that channel, so there hasn't been any real drive on that second channel. I'm kind of okay with it. I have a full-time job that I make really good money on, so I should probably concentrate on that first and foremost. And then there's Diablo content. I might throw something up there again, but for now we're just really concentrating on raid.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks for taking the time to walk us through Crusader, and I will talk to you soon.
Awesome, thank you.